The shuttle docked with a soft hiss, and Kang Do-hyun stepped onto Station Helios 9 for the first time. He carried only a worn military duffel bag over his shoulder. Everything he owned fit inside it. He had learned long ago that a man should never own more than he could carry. The docking bay was massive. Hundreds of aliens moved through it, speaking in languages that his translator chip turned into rough Korean in his ear. Some walked on two legs like him. Others floated. A few crawled on many limbs. Colors and shapes that Earth had never dreamed of filled his vision. Nobody looked at him twice. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, but not unknown. To most species here, he was just another student arriving for the new semester at the Galactic Academy. Do-hyun was 24 years old. Most first-year students were younger, usually around 18 or 19 in Earth years. The Academy had made an exception for him because of what they called his unique background. He had not told them everything. He had only shared enough to get accepted. Before applying to study xenobiology, Do-hyun had spent 8 years in the Republic of Korea Marine Corps. He had served 3 tours in conflict, zones that most people only read about in news reports. He had seen things that still visited him in nightmares. He had done things that he never spoke about. The scars on his body told those stories for him. But they were hidden under his simple gray academy uniform, and he intended to keep them that way. Earth was classified as a Category 7 Deathworld by galactic standards. This meant it was considered one of the most dangerous planets capable of supporting intelligent life. The gravity was heavy. The atmosphere contained oxygen, which many species considered a corrosive poison. The weather could destroy entire cities without warning. Predators roamed every continent, from the depths of the oceans to the frozen poles. Most galactic species could not survive on Earth for more than a few hours without protective equipment. The fact that humans had evolved there, built civilizations there, and even thrived there was seen as either a miracle or a sign of madness. Do-hyun did not think much about it. Earth was just home. He had grown up in a small town near the mountains of Gangwon Province. He had played in forests where wild boars could kill a man. He had swum in rivers cold enough to stop a heart. He had survived military training that broke stronger men than him to him. This space station felt soft, controlled, safe. He found his assigned quarters without trouble. The room was small but clean. A bed, a desk, a window that showed the stars outside. He unpacked his bag in less than 5 minutes, then sat on the bed and looked out at the endless darkness of space. He had come here to start over, to learn something new, to be someone other than a soldier. The first few weeks passed quietly. Do-hyun attended his classes and took careful notes. Xenobiology was fascinating to him. Learning how alien bodies worked, how different species had evolved to survive their home worlds, gave him a strange sense of peace. It was knowledge that had nothing to do with killing. He ate alone in the cafeteria. The food was strange but acceptable. He sat at a corner table where he could see all the exits, a habit he could not break even when he tried. Other students walked past him without stopping. Some whispered to their friends about the human. He ignored them. Then one day, someone sat down across from him. She was small, barely reaching his chest when standing. Her skin was pale blue and covered in patterns that glowed softly with bioluminescent light. Her eyes were large and dark, and they looked at him with obvious nervousness. "Is this seat taken?" she asked. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. Do-hyun looked at her for a moment, then shook his head. No. She sat down quickly, as if afraid he might change his mind. Her tray held only a small portion of something that looked like glowing soup. She ate in tiny sips, her glow flickering with each one. "I am sorry," she said between sips. "I am Villani. I study quantum mathematics." "Do-hyun," he replied. "Human," Xenobiology. Her eyes widened. You are from Earth? The Deathworld? He nodded. That must be very difficult, she said. I have read about Earth. The gravity alone would crush my bones. You get used to it, he said simply. From that day forward, Suri sat with him at meals. She talked enough for both of them, which suited Do-yoon fine. She told him about her home world, a gentle planet with low gravity and soft rains. She explained her research in quantum mathematics, which he understood only partly but found interesting anyway. She asked him questions about Earth, and he answered the ones he could. She never asked about his scars or his past. Perhaps she sensed that some doors should remain closed. Do-yoon learned that Suri was brilliant. Her professors said she had the potential to revolutionize her field. But brilliance did not protect her from everything. There was a group of Kar students at the academy. The Koreth were a warrior species, large and powerful, with 4 arms and scaled skin the color of dark stone. They believed that strength determined worth. The weak existed only to serve the strong. They had noticed Suri. Do-yoon saw them watching her in the hallways. He heard them making comments when she walked past. They called her Glowbug and Fragile One, and worse things that his translator rendered into words. That made his jaw tighten. Their leader was named Torek. He was the largest of them, the son of some important family in the Koreth Dominion. He walked through the academy like he owned it, and perhaps in some ways he did. The Koreth Dominion was a major funding partner. The administration looked the other way when Torek and his friends caused trouble. One day, Do-hyun saw Torek knock Suri's books from her hands and laugh as she scrambled to pick them up. Her bioluminescence flickered with fear and shame. Do-hyun said nothing. He did not move from his position across the hallway, but he watched. He memorized Torek's face, his movements, his patterns. He noted which guards looked away when the Koreth passed. He mapped the corridors and counted the exits. It was reflex. Training that had been burned into his bones through years of service. He could not turn it off even if he wanted to. Suri never complained about the bullying. She simply lowered her head and continued with her studies. Perhaps she thought this was normal. Perhaps she thought there was nothing anyone could do. Do-hyun finished his semester with high marks. He continued eating alone, with Suri as his only companion. He continued watching Torek and his gang from the shadows, and he waited. He did not know what he was waiting for. But something in his gut, the same instinct that had kept him alive through 3 combat tours, told him that something was coming. Something bad. The calm before the storm, his old sergeant used to call it. Do-hyun had learned to trust that feeling. The station's lights dimmed to simulate night. Most students returned to their quarters to sleep. The corridors grew quiet. Only the soft hum of life support systems broke the silence. Suri walked alone through the hallway leading from the library to her quarters. She had stayed late to finish a research paper. Her bioluminescent skin glowed softly in the dim lighting, making her easy to spot in the darkness. She did not see the shadows moving behind her. The corridor cameras flickered once, twice, then went dark. By morning, Suri was gone. Do-hyun woke at his usual time, 6 in the morning by Earth standards. He showered, dressed, and walked to the cafeteria for breakfast. He sat at his usual corner table and waited for Suri to arrive. She did not come. He waited through the entire breakfast period. His food grew cold on his tray. Students came and went around him. Still no Suri. This was wrong. Suri never missed meals. She was always hungry, always eager to talk about her latest research. Something had happened. Do-hyun left the cafeteria and walked to Suri's quarters. He knocked on her door. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Nothing. He found a maintenance worker and asked him to open the door. The worker hesitated, but eventually agreed after Do-hyun explained that he was worried about his friend. The door slid open. The room was empty. Suri's belongings were still there. Her books sat neatly on her desk. Her clothes hung in her closet. Her bed was made untouched. Everything looked exactly as it should, except for one thing. Suri was gone. Do-hyun reported her missing to Academy security. 2 officers came to take his statement. They were Telvari, a species known for their calm demeanor and bureaucratic efficiency. They asked him questions in flat, emotionless voices. When did he last see her? Did she mention any plans to leave? Did she have any enemies? Do-hyun told them about Torek and the Korath. He told them about the bullying, the threats, the way they watched Suri like predators watching prey. The officers exchanged a look that Do-hyun recognized immediately. It was the same look he had seen on the faces of officials back on Earth when they wanted a problem to go away. "We will investigate," one of them said. "But we must consider all possibilities. Perhaps your friend simply decided to leave the academy. It happens more often than you might think. She would not leave without telling me," Do-hyun said. "Perhaps she did not want you to try to stop her." Do-hyun felt his hands tighten into fists at his sides. He forced himself to relax. Getting angry would not help Suri. "Check the corridor cameras," he said. "The ones near the library. We have already checked. The cameras in that section experienced a malfunction last night. No footage was recorded." "Of course." How convenient. The officers left. Do-hyun stood alone in Suri's empty room, thinking. He had seen this pattern before. On Earth, in the military, in conflict zones where powerful people did terrible things and made the evidence disappear. The system protected its own. Justice was only for those who could afford it. Suri could not afford it. She was small, weak, and alone. Her species had no political power. Her family had no money. To the galaxy, she was nobody. But she was not nobody to Do-hyun. He began his own investigation. First, he returned to the library and traced Suri's path from her study area to the corridor where the cameras had failed. He found a small spot on the floor that looked cleaner than the surrounding area. Someone had wiped something away. A chemical scan would reveal what, but he had no access to such equipment. Next, he checked the station's environmental logs. Every section of the station monitored air quality, temperature, and chemical composition. Most students did not know this data was available to anyone who knew where to look. Do-hyun knew where to look. The logs showed a small spike in a particular chemical compound in that corridor during the night cycle. His translator identified it as a common Korath sedative used in their medical practices. In high doses, it could knock out most species in seconds. Suri had been drugged. Now he needed to find out where they had taken her. Do-hyun accessed the station's docking records. During the night cycle, only 3 ships had departed. 2 were regular cargo transports with verified manifests. The third was an unregistered shuttle that had left without filing a flight plan. This was against station regulations, but the docking officer on duty had apparently looked the other way. Do-hyun checked the officer's name and discovered that he had received a large payment to his personal account that same night. The payment had been routed through several accounts, but Do-hyun traced it back to a holding company owned by the Torek family. Now he had proof. But proof meant nothing if no one would act on it. He took his findings to Academy security. The same 2 officers listened to his report with the same flat expressions. When he finished, they told him they would need to verify his information before taking any action. Verification could take several weeks. "She does not have weeks," Do-hyun said. "She might not have days. We understand your concern. But we must follow procedure. Procedure, process, patience." These were the words of people who did not care. Do-hyun left the security office and walked to his quarters. He sat on his bed and stared out at the stars for a long time. He thought about the oath he had taken when he joined the Marines. to protect the weak, to defend those who could not defend themselves, to never leave a brother or sister behind. Suri was not a Marine. She was not even human, but she was his friend. She was alone and afraid somewhere in the darkness of space, waiting for someone to save her. Do-hyun made his decision. He packed a small bag with only essential items: a change of clothes, a first aid kit, a multi-tool. He put on dark clothing and comfortable boots. Then he walked to the station's docking bay. The shuttle he chose was a maintenance craft, small and unremarkable. It had enough fuel to reach the outer belt and return. Its security locks were basic, designed to keep out curious children rather than determined professionals. Do-hyun bypassed them in under a minute. Before he launched, he sent one message to station security from his personal datapad. The message was simple and direct. "I am going to get my friend. Do not try to stop me. I will bring her back." He did not wait for a response. He knew what it would say. They would tell him he was breaking the law, that he was putting himself in danger, that he should wait for proper authorities to handle the situation. He had heard those words before. In Korea, in the military, in every place where bureaucracy moves slowly and evil moved fast, the shuttle lifted off and flew into the darkness. Do-hyun set his course for the outer belt, for a place that appeared on no official maps. It was known only through whispers and rumors, a place where the galaxy's criminals gathered to watch blood sports. They called it the pit, and somewhere inside, his friend was waiting. The abandoned mining station floated in the darkness between asteroids like a dead thing. Its hull was old and scarred, covered with the marks of decades of neglect. Some sections were completely dark, their power systems long since failed. Others flickered with weak, uncertain light, but the docking bay was alive. Do-hyun counted over 30 ships as he approached. Luxury vessels from across the galaxy, their hulls polished and gleaming. Private yachts owned by the wealthy and powerful. Criminal transport ships that flew under false registrations. All of them gathered here for one purpose, to watch people die. He landed his stolen maintenance shuttle in a dark corner of the bay, away from the other ships. No one questioned him. The pit did not ask for identification. It did not care who you were or where you came from. It only cared about money and blood. Do-hyun stepped out of his shuttle and took a moment to observe his surroundings. The bay was crowded with people of all species. Servants carried luggage for wealthy guests. Criminals exchanged goods in shadowed corners. Armed guards stood at every entrance, watching everything with cold eyes. He walked toward the main corridor with the calm confidence of someone who belonged there. In his experience, acting like you were supposed to be somewhere was often better than any disguise. The deeper he went into the station, the louder the noise became. A distant roar, like a crowd at a sporting event. Thousands of voices rising and falling in waves of excitement. He followed the sound. The station's corridors were a maze of rusted metal and exposed wiring. Some sections were lit only by emergency lights. Others were completely dark. Do-hyun moved through them without hesitation, his eyes adjusting quickly to the changing conditions. He encountered his first guard in a maintenance corridor. The Korath mercenary was leaning against a wall, looking at something on a personal datapad. He was nearly 2 meters tall, with 4 muscular arms and dark scaled skin. A plasma rifle hung from a strap on his shoulder. When he saw Do-hyun, he straightened up and grinned. His teeth were sharp and yellow. "You lost, little creature," he said. "This area is restricted." Do-hyun did not slow down. He kept walking toward the Korath. I said stop. The mercenary reached out with one of his upper arms to grab Do-hyun's shoulder. That was his mistake. Do-hyun moved like water. He flowed under the reaching arm and struck the soft tissue at the base of the Korath's throat. The alien gasped suddenly unable to breathe. Before he could react, Do-hyun grabbed his lower left arm and twisted it behind his back at an angle that no joint was meant to bend. The Korath dropped to his knees, a quick strike to the nerve cluster behind his ear, and the mercenary collapsed unconscious. The entire fight had taken less than 30 seconds. Do-hyun took the plasma rifle and the mercenary security keycard. He bound the unconscious Korath with his own restraints and dragged him into a dark corner where he would not be found for hours. Then he continued forward. The roar of the crowd grew louder. Do-hyun followed it through a series of access tunnels until he reached an observation platform overlooking the main arena. He looked down and felt his stomach tighten. The arena had been carved from what was once the station's central ore processing chamber. It was a massive open space, at least 100 meters across, with a dirt floor stained dark with old blood. High walls surrounded it, too tall for any creature to climb. Above the walls, thousands of spectators sat on elevated platforms, cheering and screaming at the scene below. Two combatants were fighting in the center of the arena. One was a large insectoid creature with razor-sharp claws. The other was a small mammalian alien with fur matted by blood and sweat. The smaller one was clearly losing. The crowd loved it. Do-hyun looked away from the fight and searched the edges of the arena. There, beside the fighting floor, he saw a row of cages. Each cage held a prisoner, a future combatant waiting to be thrown into the arena to die for the entertainment of the wealthy. In the third cage from the left, he saw a soft blue glow. I doubt she was alive. Battered and terrified, her bioluminescence flickering weakly, but alive. Do-hyun felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger. Anger was hot and uncontrolled. This was different. This was the calm focus that had carried him through 3 combat tours. The quiet certainty of a predator preparing to hunt. He studied the arena carefully, planning his approach. 2 guards stood near the cages. 4 more patrolled the arena floor. At least a dozen were scattered through the spectator platforms. And high above it all, in a private box draped with expensive fabrics, he saw Tarek. The Korath was lounging on a cushioned chair, surrounded by servants and friends. He was laughing at something, his forearms gesturing widely as he spoke. He looked completely relaxed, completely confident. He had no idea what was coming. Do-hyun checked his stolen weapon. Fully charged. He had 14 shots before it would need to recharge. That was enough for the guards, but not enough for what came after. He would need to be smart. He moved along the observation platform until he found an access ladder leading down to the arena floor. The ladder was meant for maintenance workers, hidden from the view of most spectators. He climbed down silently, his boots making no sound on the metal rungs. At the bottom, he found himself in a service corridor that ran beneath the spectator platforms. He could hear footsteps above him, feel the vibration of thousands of feet stomping in excitement. The crowd was reaching a fever pitch. The fight above must be reaching its end. A door at the end of the corridor led to the arena floor. 2 guards stood on the other side. He could see their shadows through the gap at the bottom of the door. Do-hyun took a deep breath. He thought about Suri, small and afraid in her cage. He thought about all the others who had died in this place, killed for sport by people who saw them as nothing more than entertainment. He thought about what he had told himself when he left the military, that he was done with violence, that he wanted to be something other than a weapon. But some things were worth fighting for. He opened the door and stepped into the arena. The crowd fell silent. Every eye turned to look at the small human who had just walked onto the blood-stained floor as if he owned the place. Do-hyun looked up at Tarek's private box and raised his voice so everyone could hear. "I am here for my friend. Give her to me, and I will leave in peace." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Torek began to laugh. It was a deep, rumbling sound that echoed through the arena. Other Korath joined in, then other species, until the whole chamber rang with mocking laughter. One human? Torek said, his voice amplified by the arena's speakers. You come here alone, little Deathworlder, and you make demands of me? He leaned forward in his chair, his eyes gleaming with cruel amusement. I will give you a choice. Fight in the arena. Survive, and you can take your glowing pet. Die, and you will become part of the show. He gestured to the arena master, who stood near the largest cage. Release the Varax. The cage door opened. Something massive stepped out into the light. Dohyun looked at the creature and understood why they called this place. The pit. It was a place where hope came to die, but he had stopped believing in hope a long time ago. He believed in training. He believed in preparation. He believed in the simple truth that his drill sergeant had beaten into him during his first week of basic training. Every creature could be killed. Every enemy could be defeated. You just had to find the right way. He dropped the plasma rifle and raised his fists. The Varax charged. The Varax was a nightmare made flesh. It stood over 2 meters tall at the shoulder, with 6 powerful legs that ended in claws designed to tear through metal. Its body was covered in thick armored plates, the color of dried blood. A massive head, set on a short, muscular neck, filled with rows of teeth that could bite through bone like paper. It had been bred for one purpose: killing. Generations of selective breeding had created the perfect arena predator. Fast, strong, armored, and utterly without fear. In its life, it had killed hundreds of opponents. It had never lost. It looked at Dohyun and saw another meal. The creature charged across the arena floor with terrifying speed. The ground shook with each step. The crowd roared in anticipation, eager to see the foolish human torn apart. Dohyun did not run. He did not freeze. He watched the Varax approach, with the calm focus of a man who had faced death many times before. In the Marines, they had taught him a simple truth. Fear was natural. Fear kept you alive. But fear could also kill you if you let it control your actions. The secret was to accept the fear, then set it aside and do what needed to be done. He watched the Varax's movements, the way it shifted its weight, the angle of its head, the pattern of its steps. Every creature had weaknesses. Every predator had blind spots. You just had to find them. The Varax lunged, its massive jaws opening wide enough to swallow Dohyun's entire upper body. The crowd gasped, expecting to see the human disappear in a spray of blood. But Dohyun was no longer there. He had moved a fraction of a second before the attack, sliding to the right with a speed that surprised everyone watching. Humans were supposed to be slow. Humans were supposed to be weak. But Dohyun moved like something else entirely. Earth's gravity was stronger than most inhabited worlds. Humans had evolved under that constant pressure, their muscles and bones adapting over millions of years. When that same body moved in lower gravity, it became something unexpected. Faster, more agile, more dangerous. Dohyun ducked under the Varax's follow-up swipe and struck the soft tissue behind its front leg. His fist hit with precision born from years of martial arts training, targeting a nerve cluster that existed in most predator species. The leg buckled. The Varax roared in surprise and pain. It spun around, trying to catch the human with its tail. Dohyun jumped over the sweeping appendage and landed on the creature's back. The crowd went silent. This was not how the fights usually went. Dohyun climbed along the Varax's armored back, searching for the gaps between its plates. He found one near the base of the neck and drove his elbow down with all his weight behind it. The Varax screamed and bucked wildly, trying to throw him off. He held on. In his years of service, Dohyun had fought in jungles where tigers hunted men. He had survived encounters with wild boars that could gut a soldier with one tusk. He had faced human enemies who were just as dangerous as any animal. Each experience had taught him something: patience, precision, the willingness to take damage in order to deal more. The Varax slammed its body against the arena wall, trying to crush the human on its back. Do-hyun felt his ribs crack from the impact. Pain exploded through his chest. He ignored it. Pain was just information. It told you that your body was still working, still fighting. You could deal with pain later. Right now, there was only the fight. He found another gap in the armor, this one near the creature's skull. He drove his fingers into it and pulled. The Varax howled and threw its head back, finally dislodging him. Do-hyun flew through the air and hit the ground hard. He rolled with the impact and came up on his feet, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. The Varax turned to face him. One of its front legs was limping. Dark fluid leaked from the wound at its neck. It was hurt. Not badly, but enough to make it cautious. For the first time in its life, the Varax was facing something it did not understand. It was facing a predator from a Deathworld. The creature charged again, but slower this time, more careful. Do-hyun waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to the ground and slid between its legs. As he passed beneath its belly, he reached up and grabbed one of its hind legs, pulling with all his strength. The Varax stumbled. Its own momentum worked against it, sending it crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs. Before it could rise, Do-hyun was on its back again, this time targeting the eyes. He did not want to kill the creature. It was not evil. It was just an animal, doing what it had been bred to do. But he could not let it kill him, and he could not let it stop him from saving SURI. So he did what was necessary. His fingers found the soft tissue around the creature's left eye. He pressed hard, and the Varax screamed. It thrashed wildly, but Do-hyun held on, applying pressure until the creature's movements became desperate, panicked. Then he spoke to it. Not in words, because the Varax could not understand words, but in the language of predators, the language of dominance and submission. He made himself heavy on its back. He controlled its head. He showed it in terms it could understand, that he was the greater threat. The Varax went still. Its breathing was heavy, labored. Its body trembled with exhaustion and pain. But it was not fighting anymore. It had submitted. Do-hyun released his grip and climbed off the creature's back. He stood beside it, one hand resting on its armored flank, and looked up at the crowd. 4 minutes. The entire fight had lasted 4 minutes. The arena was completely silent. Thousands of spectators stared down at the impossible scene before them. A human, small and bloody, standing victorious over a creature that had never been defeated. Do-hyun looked up at Torik's private box. The Korath was no longer laughing. His 4 hands gripped the railing in front of him, his knuckles pale with tension. "I have won," Do-hyun said. His voice was calm, steady, as if he had just finished a morning exercise rather than a fight to the death. "Give me my friend." Torik stared at him for a long moment. The entire arena waited for his response. Then the Korath laughed, but there was no humor in it now. Only anger and wounded pride. "You think this changes anything?" Torik said. "You are one human. I have an army." He gestured to his guards. "Kill him." 12 Korath warriors stepped onto the arena floor. They were bigger than the one Do-hyun had defeated earlier. Better armed, better trained. Elite soldiers from the Dominion's private forces. They formed a circle around Do-hyun, cutting off any escape. One of them smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Any last words, Deathworlder?" Do-hyun looked at the warriors surrounding him. He looked at the Varax, still lying on the ground, watching him with something that might have been respect. He looked at the cage where Suri was pressed against the bars, her bioluminescence bright with fear. Then he smiled. It was not a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally stopped pretending to be prey. "Yes," he said. "I have some words." He cracked his knuckles. "On Earth, we have a saying. If you want to fight a human, bring friends. If you want to kill a human, bring more friends." He looked at the 12 warriors around him and shook his head slowly. "You did not bring enough." Then he attacked. The Korath warriors were trained killers. They had fought in wars across the galaxy. They had crushed rebellions and conquered worlds. They believed themselves to be the greatest warriors in known space. They had never fought a Deathworlder. The first warrior rushed at Do-Hyun with all 4 arms swinging. He expected the human to dodge or block. Instead, Do-Hyun stepped forward, directly into the attack dot in the fraction of a second before impact. Do-Hyun grabbed the warrior's lower right arm and pulled him off balance. Then he drove his elbow into the Korath's throat and swept his legs out from under him. The warrior hit the ground hard, gasping for breath. 2 more came at him from the sides. Do-Hyun ducked under the first attack and kicked the second warrior in the knee. The joint bent in a direction it was not meant to go. The Korath screamed and fell. The 4th warrior managed to grab Do-Hyun from behind, wrapping all 4 arms around him in a crushing grip. For a moment, the crowd cheered, thinking the fight was over. Do-Hyun slammed his head backward. His skull connected with the Korath's face with a sound like breaking stone. The grip loosened. Do-Hyun twisted free and threw the dazed warrior into his approaching companions. 3 down. 9 to go. The remaining Korath were more cautious now. They spread out, trying to surround him again, trying to use their numbers to overwhelm him. It was a smart strategy. Against a normal human, it might have worked. But Do-Hyun was not fighting like a normal human. He was fighting like a Marine who had spent years learning how to survive against impossible odds. He was fighting like a predator from a world where everything was designed to kill you. He never stopped moving. He never let them pin him down. He used their own weapons against them, grabbing arms and redirecting strikes so that the Korath ended up hitting each other. He targeted their weaknesses with surgical precision. The nerve clusters in their necks, the soft tissue behind their joints, the gaps in their armor where their scales were thinnest. One by one, they fell. The 8th warrior managed to land a solid hit, his fist crashing into Do-Hyun's side with enough force to crack ribs. Do-Hyun stumbled but did not fall. He grabbed the arm that had struck him and twisted. The Korath dropped to his knees, howling in pain. The 9th warrior drew a knife and slashed at Do-Hyun's face. Do-Hyun leaned back, feeling the blade pass close enough to cut a line across his cheek. Blood ran down his face, but he ignored it. He caught the warrior's wrist and broke it with a sharp twist, then used the knife to disable the 10th warrior who was charging up behind him. The 11th warrior turned and ran. Do-Hyun let him go. He had a message to deliver, and messages needed messengers. The 12th warrior, the largest of them, stood his ground. He was the leader, the captain of Torek's personal guard. He would not run. "You fight well," the captain said. "For a Deathworlder." "Thank you," Do-Hyun replied. "You fight poorly." "For anyone." The captain roared and charged. It was the last mistake he made. Do-Hyun stepped aside at the last moment and struck the captain in the back of the head. The Korath's momentum carried him forward into the arena wall. He hit it face first and collapsed unconscious. Silence fell over the arena. 12 of the Dominion's finest warriors lay groaning on the floor. One human stood among them, bloody and bruised but still on his feet. Do-Hyun looked up at Torek. The Korath's face was frozen in an expression of pure disbelief. "Open the cage," Do-Hyun said. His voice echoed through the silent arena. Nobody moved. Nobody dared to move. Do-Hyun walked toward the cages where the prisoners were held. A guard stepped forward to stop him. Do-Hyun simply looked at him. The guard stepped aside. Do-hyun reached Suri's cage. She was pressed against the bars, her bioluminescence bright with tears. Her small hands reached through the gaps, trying to touch him. "Do-hyun," she whispered. "You came." "Of course I came," he said. "You are my friend." He looked at the cage lock. It was designed to withstand tremendous force, but it had one weakness. All electronic locks did. He pulled a small device from his pocket. He had taken it from one of the fallen guards. A plasma cutter, meant for cutting through metal during repairs. He pressed it against the lock and activated it. The lock melted. The cage door swung open. Suri stumbled out and fell into Do-hyun's arms. She was shaking, crying, her light flickering wildly. He held her gently, carefully, mindful of her fragile body. "It is okay," he said in Korean, knowing she could not understand the words, but hoping she could understand the feeling behind them. "You are safe now. I have you." Behind them, Tarek finally found his voice. "You cannot do this," he screamed. "Do you know who I am? Do you know who my family is? The Dominion will hear of this. There will be consequences." Do-hyun turned, still holding Suri in his arms. He looked up at Tarek with an expression that made the Korath shrink back in his seat. "Good," Do-hyun said. "I hope they do hear. I hope they send their best warriors, their biggest ships, their most powerful weapons. I hope they come looking for revenge." He smiled, and it was the smile of something ancient and dangerous. Something that had clawed its way to the top of a Deathworld's food chain through millions of years of bloody evolution. Because I want them to know something. Earth is 8 billion more just like me. 8 billion humans who grew up on a world that tried to kill them every single day. We did not just survive there. We conquered it. We tamed it. We became its greatest predators. He paused, letting his words sink in. "So please, send your consequences. Send your armies. Send everything you have." He turned and began walking toward the exit, carrying Suri in his arms. We have been waiting for a real challenge. Nobody tried to stop him. He walked through the corridors of the pit, past guards who looked away, past criminals who pressed themselves against the walls to let him pass. Word had spread through the station like wildfire. The human had defeated a Varax. The human had destroyed 12 elite warriors with his bare hands. The human was not to be touched. He reached his shuttle and placed Suri gently in the passenger seat. He strapped her in carefully, making sure she was secure. Then he climbed into the pilot's seat and launched. The station shrank behind them, disappearing into the darkness of space. 3 days later, they arrived back in Station Helios-9. Academy security was waiting for them at the docking bay. So were officials from the Korath Dominion, demanding justice. So were reporters from a dozen different news organizations, all wanting to interview the human who had single-handedly destroyed an illegal fighting ring. Do-hyun answered none of their questions. He simply walked past them, Suri at his side, and returned to his quarters. The official report, when it was finally released, called the incident a cultural misunderstanding, resolved through dialogue. No charges were filed against Do-hyun. No explanation was given for how dialogue had left 12 warriors hospitalized. The pit was raided by Galactic enforcement 3 days later. Dozens of criminals were arrested. The fighting ring was shut down permanently. Tarek and his associates quietly withdrew from the academy and were never seen there again. And Kang Do-hyun returned to his studies. He attended lectures on xenobiology. He took notes with the same careful attention as before. He ate in the cafeteria at his corner table, where he could see all the exits. But now, he was never alone. Suri sat beside him at every meal, her bioluminescence glowing bright and steady. Other students joined them sometimes, curious about the quiet human who had done impossible things. Do-hyun answered their questions politely when he felt like it and ignored them when he did not. One day, a young Telvari student asked him the question everyone wanted to know. What really happened out there? How did you defeat all those warriors alone? Do-hyun looked at the student for a long moment. Then he shrugged and took a bite of his food. Nothing special, he said. I just brought a friend home. The student waited for more, but Do-hyun said nothing else. That night, alone in his quarters, Do-hyun stood at his window and looked out at the stars. His ribs still ached. The cut on his face was healing slowly. His body was covered in bruises that would take weeks to fade, but he was at peace. He had come to the academy to start over, to be something other than a soldier. He had thought that meant leaving violence behind completely. Now he understood something different. He was not a monster. He was not a weapon. He was simply someone who would do anything to protect the people he cared about. And in a galaxy full of predators, that made him exactly what his friends needed. A guardian, a protector, a Deathworlder.